Hello, folks. I'm going to try to explain why this financial crisis that's imminently coming up, is going to happen. Why there's no way out. And why we're going to have hyperinflation. Why it's going to end up as hyperinflation and not deflation. Here's the thing. Going back to when the Federal Reserve was created, they put a monetary policy in place with the creation of the Federal Reserve that is basically almost like it's set in stone. They've set this monetary system in place to function in a certain way, that the money is actually created from debt. What they do is they issue this money into existence, and it's loaned out into existence. And from its very start, that money creation, all the money, even the money that the fractional reserve banking system creates, all has a debt attached to it, and that debt is the interest owed or accrued to the money supply. The more interest, the quicker the system folds in on itself. But there always has to be interest. This is the reason why, and I'll get to this toward the end of my program. I'm going to try to keep this in mind because this is a long program, of why they've lowered interest rates down to ZIRP, why they're trying to get ZIRP in place, is this desperation to try to actually change this monetary system, change the way this monetary system actually functions. Because this monetary system functions on exponential growth. It functions properly on an exponential growth model. So the system has to continuously keep growing and expanding ahead of itself in order to keep creating more money and more money into the monetary supply to pay the ever-expanding debt. It's an ever-expanding credit-based monetary system. And underlying this monetary system is a resource. The resource is oil. So when you understand how the money actually works, how the money creation actually works with ever-expanding debt and credit, the flip side of credit is actually debt. When you understand how this actually functions, and you understand that underlying this entire monetary system is actually not gold, but oil. This oil is what runs everything in this system that we have today. Without oil, this system will come to a dead stop, a dead screeching stop. And I'm going to tell you, oil is a finite resource. There's not unlimited supplies of oil under the ground. They're not going to continue to find unlimited supplies of oil. Yes, they do make new oil discoveries. And they do brag that these discoveries will last practically forever. They say, oh, we've just found 200 years of oil, blah, blah, blah. But there's a reason why they do that. Why they over-exaggerate their discoveries. Number one of the reasons is they want funding for exploration. And so if they say that there's more oil there then the banks will be more willing to fork over the money needed to not only to explore the region, but also to develop it. So it's in their best interest to play up what they find. Play it up many magnitudes greater than what it actually is. It's in their best interest. And so what we have here is we also have oil that they're finding now. The oil that they're finding now is a higher fruit on the tree. What they've done is they've plucked all of the easy fruit, and now they're trying to go after the fruit that you need a ladder to get, basically, using the tree analogy. And so it's much harder oil to get. It's going to cost more to get this oil out of the ground, what they're finding now. So they're past the easy oil. It's done. It's gone. And because this is an oil-based economy, and it's actually growing, we're actually needing more oil than less oil all the time. We're finding new uses for it. And this whole thing about we're going to convert over, energy is going to be converted over, and we're going to only use solar, and we're going to have electrical green cars, and we're not going to need oil anymore. I've heard that whole story, that whole song and dance, and maybe there will come a time in the future when that becomes a reality, but it is not going to be in the near future. It's going to be more in the distant future rather than the near future. In the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to see oil is still the dominant feature that drives the world's economic system. Oil is still going to be the dominant feature. Don't count on electric cars being the be-all and end-all. It's going to take over. And electric cars are going to be everywhere in the next 5 years. That ain't going to happen. 5 years from now, you're going to find that almost as many cars are oil-based. In other words, they use gasoline as there is now. Electric cars are not going to take over in the next 5 years. In fact, they're probably going to drop back somewhat from what they are right now. Looking out into the future, maybe 30 years from now, you might see a rather substantial increase in electric cars at that point. But that's quite a ways out into the future, and it's not really viable for us to concern ourselves too much with that. We should be concerning ourselves more with what's going to happen in the next 10 years, which we're not going to see a vast increase in the amount of electric vehicles in the next 10 years. So we got to count on our oil supplies. So we got to say to ourselves, what's going to happen with the price of oil? Because this is an oil-based economy. So with all these factors in mind, if we take a look, what we'll actually see is that the whole model for our economy is based on exponential growth. This is what they set it on back in 1914. It was based on exponential growth. We were going to go out and we were going to develop the world. We were going to tear down the rainforests. We were going to build new plants, new companies, all this new growth, new industry, all required money. And of course, we would create the money by loaning it into existence. And this model works fine. This credit expansion model works fine as long as you are expanding the real world, as long as you're expanding and putting new factories in, you're cutting down rainforests. But there's a problem with this. The problem with this is the world is not infinite. The world is finite. There's a limited amount of rainforests that you can cut down. And so what happened was the world did continue growing at an exponential pace, and so did the monetary supply, up until 2008. Now, I'm going to put a bunch of charts in here, right here at this section in the program. And these charts show you the contraction. The biggest, largest contraction that we ever experienced, except for the Great Depression of 1929, which was also a contraction. But this contraction in 2008 was the first really large contraction of the entire monetary system worldwide simultaneously that almost led to a meltdown. This was a major contraction of everything, and this was a deflationary contraction. They needed to fix this in 2008. If they hadn't fixed this contraction, it would have continued to contract, and it would have overturned the entire world's monetary system and led to an unprecedented disaster like we've never experienced before in history. And so they couldn't leave it. They couldn't leave it. Absolutely not. It would have destroyed our entire system. It would have brought everything to a halt and would have created an SHTF disaster back in 2008. So they had to stop this. And there's only one way that this kind of a problem can be stopped. And Ben Bernanke, he talked about this. He said that this problem can be stopped. And any central banker in the world realizes that they do have the power to stop this problem. He said, if we have to, we will get in helicopters and we will put wads of $100 bills in the back of the helicopters, like make it like bricks, wrap it with elastic bands. And he said, we'll toss it out the window and the people can just have it. And it will stop this problem. If you dump enough blocks of $100 bills, each block, say, $10,000, and you dump enough of them out the window of a helicopter, and you just keep doing that, say you have a whole fleet of helicopters, well, the world is going to be awash in money. And it will stop a deflation. Definitely. Because deflation is when your money is disappearing. And if they put enough liquidity into the system, they will quite literally stop a deflation in its tracks. They have that power because they have the money creation tool, and that money creation tool is absolutely unlimited. They can create unlimited amounts of money. But let's not forget the model. The model says that if they create that money, they have to add it to the debt. So this is what happened in 2008. They created all this new liquidity, added it to the system, and they washed the system with money, and they stopped this deflation in its tracks. But they actually added to the problem because they only expanded the monetary system out further and made much more debt. The opposite side of credit is debt. So they created credit to stop the contraction in 2008. But at the same time, they created tremendous amounts of new debt. And they added that debt to the system. Well, you always come in the end to a spot where you have to pay the piper. And now that debt has created an over-leveraged system that we have now. And they keep expanding that debt. And they don't know where to turn. They know that they're getting to the point now where if they keep expanding that debt, they're going to destroy the currency. So they're in a trap now at this point. They don't want to destroy the currency. They want to keep faith in the dollar. So what they're having to do is trying to pretend to actually trim things back and keep faith in the fiat monetary system. So this is why the Fed is doing all these things that they're doing, like raising interest rates and trying to trim back their balance sheet so that they can keep faith, so that they can keep all the people out there who have faith in the dollar to continue to have that faith in the dollar. But the problem is what they're doing now is leading to a new contraction. Just down the road from where we are right now, this trimming back or cutting back that the Fed's doing is leading to the next contraction. And when the next contraction happens, it's going to happen extremely quickly. You're not going to see it coming. It's going to be like this last stock market crash that we just had. I'm not really going to call it a crash, but a correction. It come quickly out of nowhere. Most people never saw this coming. Well, this next one, the real contraction, the big one, is going to come like that, really quickly, suddenly out of nowhere, and boom, you're going to be in the middle of it. And when you're in the middle of it, this one's going to be terrifying because it's going to create a fear at a certain point when the stock market falls far enough and when things get dire enough. It's going to create a fear, and that fear is going to feed it and make it worse. And as it gets worse, they're not going to be able to stop the contraction. Everything's going to shut down, and that's going to make more fear and panic. And when that happens, then they're going to have to shut down the rest of the system. Now, why this has to happen is because you can only leverage the system up so far with money before faith in the fiat currencies is totally lost. And they realize this. And they know that they are getting close to the point where faith is lost. This is why they're actually seeing they've done everything. First, let me explain this a little bit further and go into a little bit more detail. They've done everything already to try to prop up the dollar. Who do you think? Why do you think these bankers didn't go to jail for getting in there and manipulating the price of silver and manipulating the price of gold? Do you actually believe that they were actually able to get in there and do that without it being noticed by agencies? I mean, if we, the peons, the morons out here in society, noticed it And we speak up against it. And we say, hey, they're manipulating the price of gold and silver. Do you actually think that the experts within these agencies and stuff didn't know about it? They're letting them get away with it. They're approving of it. And the reason why they're approving of it is if the price of gold and silver were to have run away on them a number of years back ago, they would have already lost control over the dollar and had their hyperinflation. So first, they controlled the price of gold and silver. And that worked because there's a direct correlation between the price of gold and silver and the dollar. If gold goes up in value, the dollar goes down in value. If the dollar goes up in value, gold goes down in value. This is a correlation. This correlation has an inverse relationship. And it's also the same with oil. The Holy Grail is oil. So first they manipulated the price of gold and silver using paper short contracts. And it did help stimulate the value of the dollar for quite a long time, but it started to wear off. The effect started to wear off, almost like a drug user. If he takes a drug for a certain period of time, after a while, he doesn't get a high from it anymore. He doesn't get the desired effect unless he takes more and more and more. And that's the way it got with gold and silver. They kept manipulating the price more and more and more, and gradually the effect wore off on the dollar to where it was having less and less and less of an effect on the dollar. So then they said, what are we going to do? Well, oil prices were very high. Guess what they did? They became an oil producer. They went out and they used the banking system to supply money to all of these oil refineries and stuff so that they could drill wells, these shale oil wells. They ignored regulations and stuff so that they could allow this to proceed. And what happened is as this proceeded, as they poured money into it, the amount of oil rigs across the United States increased, and sure enough, the United States became a major oil producer again. But the amount of money it took to put into that, to create that and make that happen, that money came from these same sources that have been supplying money, endless amounts of money. It came from the money stream. Let's call it the money stream. The same money stream that all these little piggies on Wall Street have been sipping from directly from the Fed. This money creation tool, over $20 trillion. It's all part of the funding that funded these oil projects. So they funded these oil projects and they started to produce oil, and they were only making a minimal profit because the oil prices fell from $100 when they did this all the way down, and this was the desired effect. The desired effect was to drop the price of oil, to have an effect on the dollar. And sure enough, because of the inverse relationship, this supported the dollar greatly. All those years when we were supposed to have the hyperinflation, and everybody out there was saying, okay, we're going to have a hyperinflation now, back in 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, we did not have the hyperinflation because the United States became a major oil producer. And the price of oil dropped, and this supported the dollar tremendously, on top of them supporting the dollar by manipulating the price of gold and silver. So what was the ultimate effect? Well, just like the gold and silver the effect slowly became neutralized, now even the low prices of oil is becoming neutralized, and the dollar is still starting to lose power, lose strength. So what's their final move? What's their final move? They're doing it right now under your nose. They got no choice left to support the dollar at this point, because first they supported it with gold, then silver, then they supported it with oil. Now they're supporting the dollar by using reverse quantitative easing and raising interest rates. This is the final support. There's nothing left after this is done. When this is done and the dollar starts to lose strength, and the dollar is continuously starting to lose strength, even with reverse quantitative easing, with manipulating the price of oil downwards, with manipulating the price of gold downwards, with manipulating the price of silver downwards, with raising interest rates, the dollar's still falling off. It fell off last year from 103, a high of 103, because the oil rammed it up that high. Oil was the holy grail of dollar support. The oil brought it up to 103. Now, what do we see? It's falling down to 89 and still falling. They're losing support of the dollar. So this means that they're going to have to continue with these policies if they don't want to lose the dollar. If they don't want the dollar to sink under the waves and drown, they're going to have to continue with these policies. They have no other choice at this point. But if they continue with these policies, what's going to happen? Well, we're going to see interest rates rising. We're going to see the U.S. 10-year Treasury bonds yields rising. This makes debt. This changes everything in the debt world, the credit world. This changes everything. And all these bubbles that they created when interest rates were down near zero are all going to pop, including the stock market bubble. What's this going to lead to? This is what's going to lead to the next great contraction. And there's no way out. Because if they back off, they're going to lose the dollar, as I've pointed out. And if they don't back off, they're going to have the contraction. Well, the contraction that they're looking for will give the dollar great support, but it's going to run away out of control on them. So when they have to, and they're forced to come back to repair the damage that the contraction creates, just like in 2008, do you remember that contraction? The tremendous damage that created so quickly in 2008 that they had to rush in and they had to stop that. If they didn't, the entire world's financial system would have melted down. The same thing's going to happen again this time. And when it happens this time, they're going to have to do the same reaction. And when they do that reaction, then we're going to see the dollar die. This is going to be the end of the dollar. And because the dollar is the staple, it's the underpinning of the world's entire financial system, all fiat currencies are going to be in jeopardy at that point. What do you think's going to happen to the price of gold and silver? And cryptocurrencies at that particular time? Because there's no other way out. There's no other route. What they've done is they've compressed this entire thing down so there's only one small little road that leads away from the fiat monetary system. And that's gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies. It's such a tiny little road. It's such a narrow little road. It's going to be absolutely tremendous, the power and the amount of people that are trying to get on that tiny little road, that they're going to try to get out through that tiny little door. Most of the people are going to get trapped in the fiat monetary system. So now, I hope you can kind of see how this is being forced to happen. That there's no other way out. There's no other escape. This is going to happen. It's all down now to the timing. I cannot begin to tell you exactly what the timing is going to be. Exactly what the timing. I cannot pinpoint the timing exactly. I can only take clues as to when this is actually going to unfold. But I don't think that it's years away. I think that it's only a matter of months away because of what the Federal Reserve is doing. And unless they back off of their policies, they're going to trigger this to actually happen. So listen, if you like this program, go over and visit my other channel, The Delta Report. All you got to do is enter in on YouTube and put The Delta Report, and it should bring up my other channel immediately in the search engine on YouTube. And sub to me over there. I really need some subs over there. I need more viewers. I do a report every morning on what's in the news. And thank you guys for listening to my channel. I really enjoy each and every one of my subscribers. You guys are really wonderful, and your comments are really great. I try to read all of your comments. I don't answer back on all of them. Some of them are more of a statement, and they don't really need to be answered. The ones that need to be answered is oftentimes when people are actually asking a question. So listen, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next show. Bye-bye.